My mother faked my sister's graduation and publicly shamed me as a failure, but I played along until the truth she buried destroyed her before everyone. I, a 25-year-old male, remember the exact moment I decided my family wasn't worth the mental toll anymore. I was sitting in my MIT dorm room, surrounded by empty Red Bull cans and 3 whiteboards covered in code architecture diagrams. The clock on my desk showed 11:43 p.m., and I'd been coding for 16 hours straight. My eyes burned from staring at the monitor, but the neural network was finally starting to recognize the patterns I'd been feeding it. The call came from a number I recognized instantly. My parents had found out I was leaving MIT through my aunt, who worked in administration. Classic small world nonsense that happens when you least need it. I hadn't told them yet because I knew exactly how they'd react, and I wasn't in a mood for another "Why can't you be more like your sister?" lecture. What the hell is this about you dropping out? Dad didn't even say hello. In the background, I could hear my mom's theatrical gasp. "I'm not dropping out. I'm leaving for a better opportunity," I said. I was already mentally checking out of the conversation while monitoring my simulation's progress on the second monitor. The algorithm was 78% complete, which was way more interesting than whatever guilt trip they were about to lay on me. Better opportunity? Mom's voice dripped with that fake concern she'd perfected over the years. "Honey, there's no better opportunity than an MIT degree. What could possibly—" I cut her off. "I've been recruited for a neural network research project with Dr. Abernathy. The work is beyond what I'd be doing in the curriculum for the next 2 years." The silence told me they had no idea what I was talking about. They never bothered to understand what I actually did. To them, computer stuff was one homogeneous blob that ranged from setting up their Wi-Fi to programming military defense systems. I could have told them I was building an AI to solve climate change or developing an algorithm to optimize porn download speeds. The blank confusion would have been identical. Dad cleared his throat. "So, you're quitting school to play with computers?" "Jesus Christ, son," Mom added. "Your sister would never give up like this, delivering the final comparison in a lifetime of them." The predictability was almost comforting. At least some things never change. That was it, the last straw in 18 years of being the forgotten kid. "Ellie got knocked up sophomore year of high school, and you both covered it up," I said flatly. "But sure, she's the perfect one." "How dare you?" Dad started, his voice turning into that dangerous low growl that used to scare me when I was 8. I hung up, blocked their numbers, and went back to my simulation. The algorithm had reached 82% progress, unlike my family relationships. 3 hours later, my phone lit up with Ellie's face. Great. The golden child had been dispatched for damage control. "What the actual hell, Daniel?" she hissed. "Mom's crying, and Dad's having a meltdown. You can't just say stuff like that and disappear." "Watch me," I replied and blocked her too. Then I took the battery out of my phone. Dramatic, maybe, but effective. I turned back to my code, the blue light of the monitor illuminating my dorm room as I continued working on something that actually mattered. We grew up in a cookie-cutter house in suburban Atlanta that looked exactly like every third house in the development. Beige siding, fake shutters, and a 2-car garage that displayed my parents' mediocre life choices. Dad sold insurance to people who didn't need it. Mom taught elementary school and brought home her teacher voice every day, and Ellie was the golden child from day one. Every family photo on the mantle featured Ellie front and center, usually holding some trophy or medal, while I stood awkwardly in the background, looking like I'd been photoshopped in as an afterthought. In our annual Christmas card photos, I was always positioned slightly behind her, like a backup actor waiting for the star to get laryngitis. In the 2012 photo, you could only see half my face because the photographer was so focused on getting Ellie's good side. When I won the state robotics championship in 10th grade, my parents skipped it for Ellie's volleyball game. She was a bench warmer that season and played exactly 4 minutes. They recorded it like it was the Olympics. Meanwhile, I accepted my trophy in an empty auditorium with just my physics teacher clapping politely in the background. I didn't even tell my parents about it until 3 days later when they noticed the trophy in my room and asked if it was for that computer club thing. When I explained what it was, my dad nodded and said, "That's nice. Did you clean your bathroom this week?" The investment difference was obvious and quantifiable. Ellie got private tutoring at $65 per hour when she struggled with basic algebra. I taught myself Python at 13 using library books and YouTube videos on our terrible home internet with a download speed that made dial-up look cutting edge. By senior year, I was getting recruitment emails from top universities. MIT offered a partial scholarship based on the encryption algorithm I developed that got picked up by a tech blog. The blog called it revolutionary and potentially game-changing for data security. My parents called it nice when I showed them the article, then asked if I'd taken out the trash. Ellie applied to the University of Georgia because her friends were going there, and the party scene was supposedly epic. Those were her exact words at dinner, and my parents nodded like she'd announced plans to cure cancer. When my MIT acceptance letter arrived, Mom glanced at it and said, "That's nice, honey," before turning back to helping Ellie with her UGA application essays. When Ellie got her acceptance with a partial volleyball scholarship 2 months later, they threw a catered party in the backyard with 50 people. At my celebration, Dad grilled burgers for the 4 of us and said, "Don't get too cocky up there with all those nerds. Most of them wash out by sophomore year." Mom reminded me to be practical since not everyone makes it through programs like that, and maybe I should keep community college as a backup plan. Meanwhile, they'd already bought UGA merchandise, were planning campus visits, and had started a dorm essentials shopping list that included a $300 comforter set. Mom spent 6 weekends in a row hunting for the perfect desk lamp for Ellie's dorm. The crazy part? I wasn't even surprised, just numb to it. Like watching a movie I'd seen too many times to be emotionally invested in anymore. I'd reached the point where their favoritism was so transparent, it was almost fascinating from a psychological perspective. After leaving MIT, I moved into what was basically a closet with a toilet in Cambridge. $1,800 for 350 square feet. The place smelled like the previous tenant's curry experiments, and the neighbors fought at 3 a.m. regularly, but it had high-speed internet and was close to the lab where Dr. Abernathy's team worked. My apartment included a shower that ran either scalding hot or Arctic cold with nothing in between, a kitchenette where you couldn't open the fridge and the cabinet at the same time, and a mattress on the floor that I picked up from a guy on Craigslist who definitely had murdered someone on it. My only real friend through all this was Zach, a CS guy who dropped out a year before me to join a startup that was either going to make him a millionaire or bankrupt him by 30, probably both. He had the kind of manic energy that either builds empires or ends up with restraining orders. When I told him my plans, he didn't judge, just asked what equipment I needed and helped me move my stuff from the dorms. The first month was brutal. I lived off ramen, microwave burritos, and enough energy drinks to make my urine glow in the dark. I lost 15 pounds of what little muscle I had, and probably gained several vitamin deficiencies that'll come back to haunt me when I'm 40. After 6 weeks, the bathroom ceiling started leaking rusty water whenever my upstairs neighbor showered. The landlord's solution? A bucket and a promise to look into it that was about as reliable as a political campaign promise. I set up my most expensive equipment on the opposite side of the room and accepted that Mold was my new roommate. I named him Gary. Gary the Mold was more supportive than my actual family and required less maintenance. Zach would stop by with groceries, finding me in the same position I'd been in 12 hours earlier, surrounded by empty protein bar wrappers and coffee mugs growing their own ecosystems. I think one of them was developing sentient life faster than my AI project was progressing. "Dude, when's the last time you showered? You smell like you died last week and no one's found the body yet. What day is it?" I'd reply without looking away from my screens. One night during a 40-hour code marathon, I hallucinated that my keyboard was melting and the characters were crawling up my arms. Zach found me passed out face down on my desk the next morning and dragged me to the shower fully clothed, turned on the cold water, and refused to leave until I ate an actual meal. The cold shower was actually an improvement over my normal shower temperature options. "You can't revolutionize AI if you're dead," he said. "Also, you're 2 days away from scurvy. When sailors in the 1700s are eating better than you, it's time to reconsider your life choices." The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd left my family to prove I could make it on my own. And here I was, barely functional without Zach making sure I didn't accidentally kill myself through neglect. But there was a difference. Zach was helping me because he genuinely cared, not because he expected anything in return. Between the sleep deprivation, malnutrition, and cognitive strain of the research, I lost track of time. Days blurred together in a caffeine-fueled haze. I'd work until my vision blurred, pass out for a few hours, then start again. Dr. Abernathy had to implement a mandatory no in the lab between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. policy after he found me asleep under my desk for the 3rd time in a week. "Your brain's not a sprint engine. It's a marathon runner," he told me, confiscating my lab key. Even Tesla had to sleep sometimes. Tesla was celibate and talked to pigeons. "Not my career blueprint," I countered, and died alone surrounded by said pigeons. "Not the example you want to follow, son." Despite the conditions, the work was exhilarating. For the first time, I was building something that mattered, something that could change how we process and understand data. My algorithm was showing promise. outperforming standard models by 32% in preliminary tests. I was actually happy. After 8 months of silence, my mom called from a new number. I half expected her to start speaking in code words about the package and the drop. "It's Christmas, Daniel. Family should be together at Christmas," she said, her voice carrying that martyred tone she used when playing the sacrificing mother. I almost hung up, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the 2 cans of Monster I just chugged, or maybe it was the fact that I'd been talking to my rubber duck debugger for so long I was starting to hear it talk back. Either way, I agreed to come home for 2 days. It was a mistake on par with Microsoft's Clippy. Zach drove me to the airport. "Text me when you get there so I know they haven't murdered you and buried you under the deck." "Your optimism is touching," I replied, grabbing my bag. "Seriously though, don't let them get in your head. You're doing something important." The flight was uneventful, except for the guy next to me who kept trying to tell me about his cryptocurrency investments. I pretended to be deeply interested in the safety card until he finally took the hint and put his headphones on. The safety card. In the event of a water landing, your seat cushion can be used as a flotation device. In the event of returning to my family, nothing could save me. Walking into my parents' house felt like stepping into a time warp. Nothing had changed, except there were even more photos of Ellie on display. It was like walking into a shrine dedicated to the cult of mediocre sister achievements. New additions included photos of Ellie at what appeared to be a sorority formal, and Ellie with her new boyfriend, a guy who looked like he had been generated by an AI program to create generic fraternity guy number 7. My mom hugged me, making a show of how much she'd missed me. Dad gave me an awkward shoulder pat like I was a coworker he barely knew. "You've lost weight," Mom said, managing to make it sound like both a concern and an accusation at the same time. Ellie looked me up and down before smirking. "Wow, you look tired. I guess the real world is harder than you thought, huh?" My sister had perfected the art of cruel comments disguised as concern, delivered with a smile so you couldn't call her on it without looking like the jerk. Dinner was psychological warfare, disguised as a family meal. Every conversation circled back to Ellie's achievements. Her internship with a financial firm where she mainly made coffee and flirted with executives, her boyfriend Tyler from a good family, her plans to graduate with honors despite struggling to pass basic statistics. Meanwhile, I got exactly 2 questions about my life. 1, when are you going back to finish school? Asked with the tone of, when are you going to stop being a disappointment? 2, is your apartment safe? Because clearly Boston was a war zone compared to the mean streets of suburban Atlanta. The breaking point came when Mom brought out a photo album, not just any album, a custom leather-bound collection titled Ellie's Journey, chronicling her college experience so far. Look at her orientation week, and here she is at her first college formal with Tyler. Doesn't she look gorgeous? Oh, and this is when we visited for Parents' Weekend. There was a separate section for her volleyball achievements, including photos from games my parents had traveled to see. Games that had happened during the same months I was setting up my research and living off packet noodles because I couldn't afford groceries. They'd driven 6 hours to watch Ellie sit on a bench and cheer occasionally but couldn't be bothered to check if I was literally starving in Boston. "Mom, no one wants to see all these," Ellie protested with fake modesty, the kind that's actually fishing for more compliments. She was practically preening. "Nonsense. Daniel wants to see what his sister's been up to while he's been away," Mom said, her tone sharpening. "Some of us actually stick around instead of playing with computers in some dirty apartment." Ellie snickered. "Yeah, bet those MIT dropouts aren't exactly lining up to hire the other MIT dropouts. What do you guys even do all day?" Mom just gave that smile. "Sweetheart, be nice. Your brother is trying his best with the abilities he has." I got up without a word and walked to the guest room. I started packing my bag. My mom followed. "What are you doing? It's Christmas Eve." "I'm leaving. Don't be dramatic. I'm just sharing family photos." I zipped up my bag. "Family photos of one family member. That's not fair. You're the one who disappeared. What am I supposed to do? Pretend I don't have photos of Ellie's life?" I walked past her. Dad was in the hallway now, arms crossed like he was a bouncer at an exclusive club I wasn't cool enough to enter. "Running away again?" he asked, blocking my path slightly. Moving forward, I corrected him. "Your mother put a lot of effort into this holiday. The least you could do is stay through Christmas morning. The least I could do." Interesting phrase. The least they could have done was acknowledge my existence in a meaningful way at any point in the last 20 years. But apparently, we were all falling short of expectations tonight. I called an Uber from the front lawn. It was 30 degrees and starting to snow, but standing in the cold was still better than another minute in that house. Uncle Jim came out with my coat. "They're idiots," he said, simply handing it to me. "Keep doing your thing, kid." Uncle Jim had always been the only sane one in the family. He'd made his money in commercial real estate and never married, which made him both the financial success story and the family mystery. My parents alternated between asking him for investment advice and pestering him about why he wasn't settled down yet. "Thanks for being the only normal person in this family," I told him. "Nothing normal about me," he replied with a wink. "Just got good at spotting nonsense early. Ellie's the golden goose, but you're the real deal. They'll figure it out eventually." I doubted it, but I appreciated the sentiment. The Uber arrived, and I left without looking back at the house. As we pulled away, I saw my mom standing in the doorway, one hand over her heart in that practiced pose of maternal suffering. It would make a great Christmas card. By May, everything had changed. My research had been peer-reviewed and validated. Harvard offered me a position that actually paid real money. Not just survival wages, but enough to live like a functioning human being. The consulting work had turned into a legitimate career with serious income. I'd upgraded from my murder mattress to a decent futon, and occasionally remembered to eat green things. I even owned a second towel now. Not because I was splurging, but because living like a functional human meant basic necessities weren't luxuries anymore. Dr. Abernathy, the research director who'd hired me, started introducing me as Dr. Daniel at meetings. When I pushed back, Abernathy just waved it off and said, "I know you didn't defend a thesis, but no one's going to question it after what you built." It was the first time in my life someone gave me more credit than I deserved rather than less. It felt strange, like wearing someone else's clothes. The algorithm we developed was attracting serious attention. 3 major tech companies had made acquisition offers, and the Defense Department had reached out about potential applications. Dr. Abernathy said my approach to neural network architecture was paradigm shifting, which sounded like academic hyperbole until I saw the data myself. We weren't just incrementally improving existing technology. We were building something fundamentally different. I still lived simply, still worked too much, but now I had direction and recognition from people who actually understood what I was building. I'd moved to a slightly better apartment, one where the shower temperature had 3 settings instead, 2, cold, hot, and skin melting. My new place had actual windows that faced something other than a brick wall, and the kitchen was big enough that I could open the refrigerator door without hitting the stove. Pure luxury. Zach's startup had actually taken off, proving that occasionally the universe doesn't completely screw over good people. He'd upgraded from his dying Civic to a Tesla he could barely afford but loved showing off. From ramen to ridiculousness, he called our trajectory. He'd swing by my place in his absurdly expensive car, wearing clothes that still had tags on them because he hadn't quite adjusted to having money yet. "Dude, you could afford a way better place now," he'd say, looking around my modest apartment. "I'm investing instead," I'd reply. "Compound interest is more satisfying than granite countertops." The truth was, I was saving everything I could, not because I had specific plans for it, but because having financial security was the ultimate screw you to people who thought I'd fail. Every dollar in my investment account was a dollar of independence, of never having to ask for help from people who'd proven they wouldn't give it. Then the gold envelope arrived in the mail like some kind of fancy bomb. It was heavy cardstock with actual wax sealing the back, like we were suddenly living in Downton Abbey instead of 21st century America. Inside was an invitation in flawless calligraphy. "You are cordially invited to celebrate Ellie's graduation from the University of Georgia." No personal note, no acknowledgement of our estrangement, just my mother's handwriting on the envelope and a formal invitation inside. It was the perfect encapsulation of my family dynamics, all appearance, no substance, a beautifully wrapped empty box. I almost threw it away, but something stopped me. Maybe it was time to show up as myself, not as the failure they imagined, but as the person I'd become. Or maybe I just wanted to see their faces when they realized I hadn't ended up in a ditch somewhere. Zach thought I was insane. These people are emotional vampires. Why go back for more? It's like you're volunteering for psychological waterboarding. "Because I'm done hiding," I said. "And maybe I want to see their faces when they realize the son they wrote off is now Dr. Daniel." "That's either the healthiest or unhealthiest thing I've ever heard you say," Zach replied, shaking his head. "I can't tell which." "Me neither," I admitted. "But I'm going anyway." The day of Ellie's graduation party, I wore a simple blue button-down and slacks. I wasn't there to impress anyone. No Harvard insignia, no visible signs of my success. I wanted them to see me, not my credentials. Zach insisted on dropping me off. "Text me if you need extraction. I'll be 10 minutes away pretending to shop at Target like I need more stuff in my apartment." The Tesla turned heads as we pulled up to my parents' suburban street. Another time, I might have appreciated the irony of arriving at my sister's celebration in a car that cost more than her entire education. My parents' house looked exactly the same. White brick, perfect landscaping, American flag by the door, like they were auditioning for a mortgage commercial. The only difference was the fleet of cars parked outside, luxury SUVs and sensible sedans belonging to family, friends, and relatives. The backyard had been transformed with fairy lights, catered food stations, and a massive congratulations graduate banner hanging over a professional photo display of Ellie in cap and gown. Ellie was holding court in a white designer dress, surrounded by friends who all looked like carbon copies of each other. Same highlighted hair, same careful makeup, same studied casual poses for the inevitable Instagram posts. They were like NPC characters in a video game, decorative but interchangeable. My mom was playing the proud hostess in a St. John knit suit that screamed suburban wealth. My dad was manning the bar in his country club casual attire, and various relatives I barely recognized were scattered around, looking impressed by the spread. The catering included a carving station, a raw bar, and what appeared to be a professional barista making custom coffee drinks. The whole setup probably cost more than my entire emergency fund. For the next hour, I watched the celebration unfold from a distance. People with frozen smiles would stop by my table with carefully curated questions. "So, what have you been up to? Any plans to go back and finish school? Living in Boston still?" Such an expensive city. I gave vague answers and watched them mentally file me under the family disappointment. One aunt kept referring to my work as my computer hobby, like I was building model trains in a basement somewhere. Uncle Roger asked if I was still doing that coding thing with the tone of someone inquiring about a teenage phase they expected me to outgrow. Then my mom clinked her glass for a toast, the universal signal for enforced family nonsense. "We are so proud of Ellie today," she began, her voice carrying across the yard. "Full honors scholarship recipient and now headed to Morgan Stanley in New York. This is what happens when you commit to excellence and actually finish your education." She looked directly at me. Not everyone's path is so straightforward, of course. Some take detours, some never reach their destination at all. Her smile turned cruel. "You dropped out. Maybe you'll make it as a mall security guard. I hear they're hiring people who can't finish things." People clapped, laughing. Ellie beamed. I sat perfectly still, waiting. A few more minutes. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Abernathy. "Car's on the way. Press briefing in 2 hours. Ready?" I replied simply, "Yes." The timing was almost too perfect. If I believed in a higher power, I'd think they had a sense of humor and excellent dramatic timing. 3 minutes later, a black town car pulled up to the curb. Not just any town car, a Mercedes S-Class. The driver, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than everything in my parents' closets combined, walked directly to me in the backyard. Conversation stopped, heads turned, the music seemed to fade. It was like a scene from a movie, except instead of the dramatic reunion, it was the dramatic screw you moment. The driver moved with purpose, ignoring the gaping partygoers as he approached my table in the corner. "Dr. Daniel," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes," I replied, not bothering to raise my voice. "Harvard University's AI Research Initiative sent me. You're needed for the announcement briefing in 2 hours." I felt every eye in that backyard on me. I could practically hear the mental gears grinding as they processed what was happening. Dr. Daniel, Harvard, important enough to send a car, important enough to be summoned to a press briefing. "I'm ready," I said, turning to look at my mother. Her face had gone pale, her glass frozen halfway to her lips, like she'd blue-screened. Ellie stood next to her, mouth slightly open in a pose less flattering than any of her curated Instagram shots. Dad was doing that thing with his jaw that happened when he was trying not to look surprised. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just nodded once at my parents and walked to the car. Nothing says I've succeeded beyond your wildest expectations quite like being whisked away by a fancy car in the middle of someone else's celebration. As I slid into the back seat, I caught Uncle Jim raising his glass to me from across the yard. The press briefing was about our breakthrough in neural network architecture and its implications for data security. Nothing I couldn't have rescheduled, but Abernathy understood the situation and had arranged for the university's executive car service as his own subtle middle finger to my family. "Sometimes science needs a little theater," he told me when I'd mentioned the graduation party, especially when dealing with people who don't understand science. But wait, it gets better. When I returned to my hotel that night, I had a text message from a number I didn't recognize. "It's your cousin Megan. Got your number from Uncle Jim. Need to talk to you about something important. Can I call you?" I was curious enough to say yes. Megan had always been neutral territory in family politics, Not particularly close to me, but not openly hostile either. What she told me was better than any revenge I could have planned. That whole graduation party? It was fake, she said without preamble. Ellie failed 3 classes this semester. She still has 2 semesters left before she can graduate. Your mom staged that entire thing because all her friends' kids are graduating on time. Are you serious? I asked. Deadly. I work in the registrar's office at UGA. Ellie's on academic probation. That Morgan Stanley job? It's contingent on her graduating, which isn't happening anytime soon. They'll yank the offer when they find out. Your parents already took out a second mortgage on the house to cover her extended tuition and that party. Dad's insurance business is down 40% this year. The irony was too perfect. My sister, the golden child, had been living a lie this whole time. And my parents, rather than face reality, had thrown a fake graduation party complete with professional, photography, and catering, all to keep face. How long have they known? I asked, trying to process this new information. Your parents? At least 2 months. Ellie got the news right after spring break. Your mom called the registrar's office personally to see if there were any special arrangements that could be made. She tried to donate money to the athletic department to make Ellie's grades disappear. It almost turned into a scandal. It was so pathetically on brand, I couldn't even be surprised. The entire family dynamic was built on illusions. The successful insurance salesman who was actually drowning in debt. The perfect daughter who was actually failing out of college. The disappointing son who was actually revolutionizing his field. Thanks for telling me, I said to Megan. You deserve to know. Also, that car thing today? Legendary. Aunt Karen is still having a meltdown about it. Called me asking if I knew you worked at Harvard now. I laughed for what felt like the first time in years. Let her keep wondering. The next morning, I had an email from my mother. The subject line read, "So proud of you." The body was brief, darling. We had no idea you were doing such important work. Your father and I would love to hear all about it. Also, things have been a little tight lately with Ellie's tuition and the party expenses. If you're in a position to help the family out, we'd be so grateful. Love, Mom. No apology, just a cash grab now that they knew I was successful. The nerve of this woman was truly impressive. I waited 2 days before calling her, just long enough for her to think I might actually be considering it, just long enough for her to start planning how she'd spend my money. Daniel, I'm so glad you called. We were all so impressed by— Cut the nonsense, Mom, I interrupted. I know about Ellie. Silence. The kind of silence that has weight and texture. What about Ellie? Her voice had that dangerous edge it got when her perfect facade was threatened. I know she failed her classes. I know she's not graduating. I know the whole party was staged. More silence then. Who told you that? Was it Jim? He's always been jealous of— It doesn't matter who told me. What matters is you're still playing the same games, still creating the same false narratives, and now you want my money to fund them. That's not fair. We've supported both our children. I actually laughed. The absurdity was too much. Supported? You threw a fake graduation party for Ellie that probably cost more than my annual rent while I was eating ramen for months because you couldn't be bothered to help with my apartment deposit. We would have helped if you'd stayed in school. You chose to leave. And now I'm with a position at Harvard while Ellie's on academic probation. Funny how that worked out. I could hear her grinding her teeth through the phone. Probably worried about what this would do to her, standing in the neighborhood gossip hierarchy. The thought of having to explain to her tennis friends why Ellie wasn't actually working at Morgan Stanley in the fall was probably giving her hives. Her entire identity was wrapped up in having the perfect daughter with the perfect life. The reality didn't fit the narrative she'd been crafting for 2 decades. So you won't help your family after everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Name one thing in the last 5 years. The silence told me everything I needed to know. She was probably mentally scrolling through a list of imaginary sacrifices, trying to find one that sounded plausible. Don't contact me again. Not for money, not for holidays, not for anything. We're done. I hung up and blocked her new number too. It took about 30 seconds before I got a text from my dad's phone. I didn't even read it, just blocked that one too. This wasn't a negotiation or a discussion. It was a severance. Uncle Jim texted me later that day. Heard you nuked the bridge. About time. Drinks on me next time you're in town. Zach chimed in next. So, did you cave and Venmo them for Ellie's tuition emergency fund? I replied. Does MIT offer a degree in that? No. LMAO, that's my boy. I never attended another family event, never responded to the sudden flood of interest from relatives who had written me off. My success wasn't their story to claim, and their failures weren't my problem to fix. The invitations kept coming for a while. Holidays, birthdays, random family gatherings. Each one went straight into the trash. The texts from Ellie started angry, turned manipulative, and eventually stopped completely. She'd spent her entire life being the favorite. She had no idea how to exist in a world where that didn't matter. The best part? 6 months later, Zach and I sold our first algorithm patent. The check had enough zeros to make my eyes water. I bought exactly 2 things to celebrate, a high-end coffee machine and a plane ticket for Uncle Jim to visit Boston. The rest went into investments. 2 years in, my investments had quadrupled. I bought a brownstone in Cambridge, cash, no mortgage, while my parents were secretly refinancing their house to cover Ellie's repeated attempts at finishing college. Meanwhile, my algorithm was being licensed by 3 companies, each paying more annually than my dad made in 5 years selling insurance. Sometimes the biggest victory isn't proving people wrong. It's living your life so completely on your own terms that their opinions become irrelevant. And occasionally, it's watching karma deliver exactly what they deserve in real time. I still work too much, still check my code more carefully than I check my interpersonal relationships. But I'm building something that matters, surrounded by people who see me for who I am, not who they wish I was.